tomorrowpictures.tv. Another one?
I'm really grateful for you being here. This is From the Belly. I'm Doug Wheeler. This is Frederick Taylor. Frederick is the creative director, owner, and operator of Tomorrow Pictures. How did you get into this work? Tell us a little bit about your story.
It's interesting because I come from a family of people that are very creative and very community oriented. Both of my grandmothers hail from the South, one from South Georgia, Albany, Georgia, and the other one from Memphis, Tennessee. And by strange coincidence, both of my grandmothers were teachers, and they both were very good teachers. And both of my grandmothers went to college at a time in
Yes.
the early 20th century where most women didn't go to college. And by the fact that they were African American and were able to go to college is a profound achievement beyond anything that I could ever imagine. Like, I put it on par with, if I had said I wanted to be an astronaut.
Yes.
Yes. The amount of work and perseverance that I would have had to have gone through to achieve that goal would have been monumental. That's the level that I put both of my grandmothers on. They're on my Mount Rushmores because they changed the dynamic and the discourse of our family forever.
Wow.
We were never the same because they were women and they became educated. And automatically, when you do that, you raise the standards of everyone around you. So it just changed the game. And my father was and is a jazz and blues musician, and he was a part of the sort of bebop movement in the 60s in Chicago, and then later moved on to the 70s R&B power soul era in Philadelphia.
So you were born and raised in Chicago, at least for part of your story.
Yeah, part of the story is Chicago, part of the story is Philly.
Okay, because I was born in Chicago.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
my mother was from the South Side. My father was from a little farming community outside of Chicago, Monticello, Illinois. But my mother grew up on the South Side. At 16 years old, she was a model at Marshall Fields.
What?
She used to drive the car down. My grandmother would be with her, and I think my grandmother was there as a good Methodist just to kind of see what my mother was up to. And that was pretty highfalutin stuff for a 16-year-old.
Completely. That's exciting stuff. I mean, most of the people that I know who hail from that part of the world have some interesting stories about their families. My mom, went to Hyde Park High School. Okay. Went to high school with Minnie Riperton. My mom went on to go to undergraduate school at Loyola University of Chicago. My father ended up in graduate school at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And then they met. And the rest is history. My father fled the apartheid-like South, as a young man because he wanted more for himself.
Was he playing music then, Frederick?
Yeah, he's been playing music for quite some time. With my parents, my parents wanted a piece of the pie, so to speak, a seat at the table. They wanted to be taken seriously. They wanted to be pillars in the community. They wanted to be respected by all. They wanted to defy the numbers at the time. I mean, my parents were the kind of parents that were the first Black people to do X, Y, and Z, move into a neighborhood, have a specific type of job, or accomplish a certain level of achievement. Both my parents have gone on and gotten PhDs. They're endlessly smarter than I'll ever be. I'm just more arty farty and have a little bit more shake to my game. And that's a big part of who I am. My mother is very much entrenched in public health. She has a PhD in public health and has been very involved with communicable diseases. So I
Mm.
grew up in a household of cover your mouth, wash your hands.
Mhm, mhm.
So when the pandemic hit, my mom calls me and says, "Hey, I've got some sanitizer, some Lysol, and some toilet paper waiting for you at the door. Come get it."
Okay.
You know, that was
She was
day
ready.
one. She was ready. You know, my mom's built for this kind of stuff. You know, and then, my dad's a musician. So the world to my father is about merit. It's like you're either a good musician or a bad one.
Mm,
You
mm.
know, so it was never a discussion about who's making the music. It was always about where it comes from. He's been in my ear for years about the tenets and the values of Nashville. So there's a interesting evolution and revolution that's going on here that is gestating through the music industry. And the long held secret here has been that this is not just country music, it's so much more. And what has supported and created country music is blues and soul
Yes.
and Tejano music out of Texas and places like that. They've just buried it from it ever getting the credit that it deserves. And my father's like, this is going to change. And as this evolves and change, so go will be the culture of Nashville as well. They just built the History of African American Music Museum here across the street from the Ryman, which is an astounding cultural feat.
Oh, yes.
They just told the Republican Party, no, we're not going to have your political convention here back in the early summer. There was, strangely enough, a terrorist attack here just a few
Yes.
weeks ago. So Nashville's on the map. There's
Yes.
there's there's stuff to do here. And then you had said you were originally from Kentucky
Yes.
as well, and a certain amount of my family hails from Kentucky and Tennessee, and then my dad went to Kentucky State
That's what you had said.
University.
And I went to Western Kentucky. So I
Yeah.
graduated in 83, but going to Western, we'd go to Nashville. I mean, there was nothing in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And we
Oh,
would go to
yeah.
Nashville quite often. But it was, back in the early 80s, I mean, it was sleepy compared to what's going on there now.
Oh, exactly. And then one generation before you, my dad was hanging out at college mixers with a
Yeah.
young, brash, loquacious Cassius Clay.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So, Louisville's got some great history to it.
Do your parents live in the Chicago area still, or are they?
They live in Atlanta, right outside of Atlanta, a place called Marietta, Georgia,
Oh,
which is
sure. Oh,
about.
sure. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So they live in Marietta. My mom is still involved. She teaches. She's one of the matriarchs of the Kennesaw program for nursing
Okay.
at Kennesaw University. And then my father, he retired a few years back, so he's hanging out at home. I personally think he should still be working, but he's earned it. He did a lot for a long time. You know, and I think for him things are exhausting. I mean, he went to college in the early 1960s and then straight to graduate school and was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. So
Wow. Wow.
he was kind of on the run a little bit. Um, and then from there, became a teacher and a professor and a musician, and you know, constantly overcoming obstacles and scaling walls, and that gets tiring. I mean, you just get
Yeah.
to a point where you're just like over it. And I think a lot of what's gone on in the past 4 years, and especially within the past year, it's exhausted him. I mean, it's like at times you can just see it in his eyes. He's just like, oh my God, I've spent my whole life fighting for something that, a few meatballs are eradicating within seconds. you
Hmm.
know like, who storms the Capitol building and breaks windows and goes on to government property? That's
Yes.
lunacy. Under any
Yeah.
circumstances, that's lunacy, and it's never justified. And for people to say that, oh, the election was stolen, no, they're just mad because for the first time in history, no particular cultural group has had their voice muted by the system. What they don't understand is that we had created a long-standing tradition in this society of people of color don't vote. We're not allowed to vote. We're scared to vote. We're scared to go to the polls, or our votes are thrown out. Now they're not thrown out, and so everything that they thought was red isn't so red anymore, and
Mhm.
everything that's purple is blue, not purple. And they got to live with it. And so they got to meet us in the middle, and they've got to be able to decide how can we speak to everybody and get off of this notion that it's okay for everybody to run around and eat fast food and watch football, and that's what being American is all about. And I don't think that it is, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, we're right on the cusp of hopefully some really big changes.
Yeah, I think, dude, I think that it's beyond hope. It's gonna happen.
Hmm.
It's gonna. I was telling people before Biden won, Biden's gonna win, and everybody thought I was weird. Then I told everybody Ossoff and Warnock are gonna win, and they thought I was weird. I don't care, man. It's gonna happen.
What else are you predicting, Frederick? What else is coming? That's
What else is
good.
coming? I think LeBron's going to win another title. I do believe
Okay.
that as
Okay.
well. But I do believe this, and you can write it down. As we get on the other side of the vaccine, there will be an explosion of culture. It will be diverse.
Mm.
It will be multi-ethnic. It will be void of ageism. LGBTQ will be magically sewn into the fabric of our culture and our society. And we're going to live something that we've never seen before. The 1920s is going to meet the 1970s. That's what's going to happen. And that's where we're going to be, where we're going to evolve again and we're going to see things from a different perspective and vantage point. That's why, like, what the music that these guys are doing now, Marvin and Willie, is so profound. It's like it resonates. When you
Yeah.
listen to the music, you're just like, it just goes right through you. You're like, oh my God.
The first time I heard your name mentioned was when I was doing the podcast with Marvin and Willie, and I
Mm.
referenced a few of those videos that you did for them through Tomorrow Pictures, and I said, "Man, the quality of those things were just killer."
Wow. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. There's a lot of effort
Mm.
and a lot of love that goes into that stuff. We love what we do, and we are our best selves always, in spite of what anybody else may think of us. And that's just kind of the overall zeitgeist of what they do and what I do. Their music is so incredibly insightful and profound and vivid, and I just felt that it needed a visual representation that was worthy of it. And I was hanging out with Marvin. Gosh, this is several years back. This is pre-Trumpian era, and he had said something about Leonard Cohen, and
Mm.
Leonard Cohen is one of his heroes. And Leonard Cohen had produced a film about himself in the 1960s that was, ladies and gentlemen, Leonard Cohen. And it was shot in New York. It was kind of like this mise en scène, verite, kind of new wavy kind of thing, black and white. And Marvin was like, that's just how I see myself. That's how I see the music. That's what's in his
Mm.
head visually.
Mm. Mm.
Because I had asked him, what do you see when you were making the music? And he's like, this is what I see. And I said, that's where I'm going to point my compass. I'm going to sail in the direction of Leonard Cohen. So much of what you're looking at is an ode to Leonard Cohen and that sort of 60s, 70s intellectual, Frederick Wiseman, Maisel Brothers, Andy Warhol type of art, intellectual installation type of vibe, where a lot of smart people and creative people got together and were discussing the brave new world. And so so much of his music and these visuals are right on time with what we're doing right now as a
So
society.
I'm assuming you love that project. Then it sounds like it was the perfect marriage.
Completely. It's what you live for in this business, is to be able to work with great people, and I think Willie and Marvin are great people.
Yeah.
They understand where music comes from and what particular cultural groups have influenced it. They're not playing this game with themselves and pretending that they're going to deny the history of specific people that have contributed to the discourse of our musical language and lexicon in this society, which is probably one of our greatest exports as a culture. It's one of the few
Hmm.
things that we do that other people around the world respect. I mean, they might hate our guts, but guess what? They play our music. And Willie and Marvin are people that feel the same way as well. And there's a sensitivity and a sensibility that's there. And we talk about it all the time. So, Ossoff and Warnock winning in Georgia is profoundly affecting Willie and Marvin and myself as artists as well. And we've been talking about this moment before it even happened.
Mm.
So this is exciting stuff for us.
From a creative space, where do you see yourself in this on this threshold and all this big wave of change?
So a part of my business pivot during COVID has been to expand my market and really have started to focus in the places where I can have an influence.
Hmm.
To be perfectly honest, Atlanta was a big part of teaching me that as well. Some of these other places, these smaller cities, these flyover states, stuff like that, they're kind of stuck in their ways, and they're stuck in a cultural conundrum, because on one level they like culture to be stunted and to be favored towards them, and then on another level, in spite of whatever happens, whether people are crawling through the windows at the Capitol, we're going to have NFL playoff Sunday.
Yes.
And so we're able to compartmentalize and overlook things. On one level, we like a specific group of people because they perform in a certain way. And then on another level, hey, we want them to take a back seat and they don't get to have a seat at the table or a voice. But we really enjoy them performing for us.
Hmm.
And, that's not gonna fly, and at the end of the day, just to speak frankly, there are way more Black kids that want to do well in school, that want to get good grades in biology class, than there are that want to score touchdowns. To be perfectly honest, and not saying that scoring touchdowns is a bad thing, but like in any cultural group, the numbers of people that participate in athletics, that is a small percentage of people. And the vast majority of people are interested in other pursuits. And we're turning a corner where we have cultural groups that are demanding more. The kids growing up now that are Latino, they're like, I'm not working in a hotel. It's not going to happen. Or they're Asian American, like, I'm not going to run a dry cleaners.
Right.
Or if they're LGBTQ, they're like, I'm not living in the closet. Are you crazy?
Hmm.
And if they're female, they're like, I'm going to run for president of the United States. Bleep you. That's the world we live in now.
Where do you see yourself in that? Where are you now in that, and where do you see yourself, and what are you hoping for, just for your own personal work?
Yeah, I'm evolving as a storyteller and a curator and an agent for change. I kind of have my own thing. I have strategic partnerships with other people like Willie and Marvin, and then the ability to create opportunities and mentor others to encourage them into the space. To say that there's more value over here in positively charged media than negatively charged media, and that this murder and this mayhem and this over the top overt sexuality universe that we've lived in, that's just been such a massive distraction that's gotten us nowhere, is over. It's like the Kardashians are not a part of the sexual revolution. they're as part of the sexual commercialization of sexuality.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
they've proven you can make a lot of money being sexual, you know, and that foundation was created by people like Hugh Hefner, you know, and Bob, and you know, the guy that ran Penthouse, I forget his name, Bob
Well, and at
something.
some level, Donald Trump, right?
And oh, Donald Trump rode the wave, dude. He's like, he surfed his way into shore on it. And it's a good example of how it can really derail culture and affect politics and perception
Yeah,
and
goodness
how we think. And you know, he represents a lot of that. And then you look at it, how it's completely handcuffed the career of Kanye West. I mean, come on. If we looked at the work and we put it on a graph or a chart, there's pre-Kim, post-Kim. And honestly, some of the best work he ever did was before his relationship with Kim Kardashian.
Wow.
And it profoundly changed him as an artist. You know, there's no question about that.
Yeah, who we choose to be with, or whoever chooses us to be with, however that works out, it's like it can affect our whole life, right?
Oh, any respectable artist will tell you that. You
Wow.
know, and you know, Kanye put himself in a very interesting position. There's rumor now that they may not stay together.
Yep.
And if they don't, it'll be interesting to see where his work goes post that relationship. And
And
I'm going
Frederick,
to
Frederick, what do you make of his relationship with Donald Trump? I mean, that just all of that. I mean, we only see what we see and hear what we hear. But what do you make of that?
well, you know, it's opportunistic. I mean, Kanye's from Chicago too. He's from the South Side, you know? He, in lieu of profitability, I think abandoned some of the tenets of who he is as a person. It becomes so incredibly enticing to be around money and power. And we've become so absorbed and corrupt as a society, even just the perception of money and power is titillating. Donald Trump, at the end of the day, doesn't have any real money and doesn't have any real power. It's all a myth. It's all been fabricated. It's fake. And he's been able to create a mythology around himself that other people really buy into and they believe. You know, show me anybody that is of some level of decent moral character that has benefited from this guy.
Yes.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. And so, you know, Kanye got a little bit too full of himself and thought, this guy's the next wave. This guy's the next thing. This guy is what's really going down and what's really happening. And he picked the wrong horse to bet on. And it blew up in his face and he lost out. He really did. He made some cataclysmic mistakes strategically as far as where he needed to hitch his wagon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a siloed situation, I'm sure Donald Trump is extraordinarily pervasive or persuasive, you know, but he's the kind of person that when you're around him, you got to take a step back and say, you know, Mr. Trump, I need to think about that for a second
Yeah.
before I
Right.
make a decision. You don't make a decision about anything Donald's selling to you in the room with Donald. And that's the mistake that Kanye made. And it was a rookie mistake. And it's a rookie mistake from a black kid from the South Side of Chicago that grew up and didn't have a
Mm.
lot and didn't have a lot. Those are the people that are in his wheelhouse, man. When you grow up and you don't have a lot, Donald knows how to get in your head and make you feel like $1 million and make you think like you can have $1 million too. And it's just a bunch of horse crap.
Yeah.
And he just bought into it. And it's unfortunate because I just think that we're all obligated to things that are bigger and better than us. And that's what makes culture and our ethnicities and our backgrounds so special. And that's why this whole nationalistic Americanism thing is a pile of crap. We should be beholden to our ancestors. We should be beholden to our cultures, because it keeps us intact. So it's like, for me, as a Black person, I'm only going to act so crazy before, something my grandmother taught me is going to kick in, and I'm going to be like, okay, wait a minute, I need to slow my roll.
Mm-hmm,
I need
mm-hmm.
I need to think about the effect I'm having on other people, and not only in my race but in other cultures. I've got a kid in my office who's Jewish. I've got another person in my office who's from Argentina. I've had another kid in my office who's Muslim. I have an obligation to these people that's greater than how much money I'm going to make, you know. And for whatever reason, Kanye thinks that the money and the attention and the popularity matter. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, that's going to be the big learning lesson with Trump. Trump's going down in a ball of flames, and anybody that's attached to him is going down with him. It's not going to look good on your resume, when you're trying to move on with your life, if that's where you were affiliated.
And Frederick, what do you see happening with, let's say, the 70 million people that voted for Trump? I'm sure, I'm sure that there's many of those people that would not have supported. I want to assume at least that many of those people would not, or at least a portion of them would not have supported what happened at the
Sure.
Capitol. But
Oh, absolutely.
what's going to happen with this kind of the great divide that we're in? Even as you
Yeah.
talk about, things are going to move forward. How is this idea of coming together? Is this coming together going to happen, and what's going to bring the coming together? I mean, what's going to bring it to fruition in your mind?
The reality of survival. It's no different than when people of Jewish heritage were being oppressed in Germany. And at the beginning of World War II, we as Americans turned our backs on it. We said, that's not us. That's not our problem. It has nothing to do with us. We're staying out of it. And then we had to take a 180 once we really realized what was going on, and that the security and sanctity of the Jewish nation has a lot to do with our ability to survive. We did the same thing when it came to slavery and civil rights and the abuses of other cultures as well. We just looked the other way. I mean, some of the most famous pictures are the ones where you see a Black man with a noose around his neck hanging from a tree, and there's all of these white people standing around, not doing anything. And I always wondered, I'm like, how many of those white people are really supporting that, and how many of those white people are really upset by that? And I would say most of them were upset. But one of the things that I've noticed about, and I hate to say this, white, Christian, cisgendered Gentiles, is that some of them have a tough time going against the grain. They have a tough time saying no to their own kind. If there's one bully in the room, they just ride with that bully. Because they don't know how to stand up and say, hey, you're wrong. I'm not going to be a part of that. And I think those 70 million people, that's not a real number. I'd say more than half of those people genuinely want people to live and let live, and they want everyone to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they're not interested in stepping on anybody to get anywhere. It's a small group of people that actually don't care about others. We just have a large group of people who don't want to stand up for others because they're afraid.
Yeah, and this white Christian group that you speak of, what in your mind, what are some of the reasons, or the predominant reason of why they wouldn't stand up? I mean, the herd mentality, or whatever we want to describe that. Because I'm thinking of religious stuff. I mean, that's one of the angles that I come from. But
yeah.
And the fact that the whole Christian kind of
Yeah.
the dogma and all of that. But one of the things that you and I were kicking around earlier is why the journey is significant for everyone. And we also know that in Western culture, there seems to be many people that have very limited opinions on what paths are to be taken and what paths are not to be taken, the right path, the wrong path. And I'm thinking of, white Christian folks have a very limited idea of what path everybody's supposed to be on. Not just them, but everybody's supposed to be on. But can you speak for a little bit about the journey and why it's significant for everybody?
Yeah, because each path is an individual point of light. We come into this world alone, we go out of this world alone. We come into this world pure. We come into this world having no concept of, white, black, gender, sexuality, rich, poor, or whatever. You know, like some of the best times we have were when we were little, before people started telling us who we were or what we were. I remember being a small kid and upset that people didn't like Jewish people. It bothered me as a person, as a little boy. And people would say, well, they killed Jesus. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, Jesus was a Jew. It just would become so convoluted. And then, this idea that, dark skin isn't beautiful, only light skin is. Straight hair is good, blue eyes are good, curly, kinky, dark hair is bad. We would just become, rich people are better than poor people.
And those things are taught, right?
Those things are taught, and they're bred into the culture and the society and our art and entertainment. It's like when you go watch all those old TV shows, there's so much racism in it.
Yes.
And you, at the time when you're young and you're developing, you don't even realize that it's racist.
Yes.
I mean, I watched an old Odd Couple once where Oscar and Felix, Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, they go to a Japanese restaurant, and Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi is the purveyor of the Japanese restaurant, and they treat him like crap.
Mm.
And they're making fun of him. And I'm like, that's, Academy Award nominated actor Pat Morita, and you guys are making fun of him. And then I met a guy later in life who grew up with Pat Morita in an internment camp in California and talked about how great he was as a person.
Mm.
And the other guy that was in that internment camp as a kid was George Takei. Do you know what I mean? You don't know where people are coming from, and you don't know what they've gone through and the amount of strength and resilience that they have in order to survive. And we've had a bad habit in this society of putting down great people for being themselves. I mean, it's like, Barbra Streisand's ugly because of her nose. Really? Really? I mean, this is where we are with these things, And then
Jane Fonda's not patriotic.
Exactly.
We just watched the documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man! I'm telling you what, that was.
Oh my God!
It was amazing. She's an amazing human being.
Amazing person and human being, and she's had to live with people calling her Hanoi Jane.
Yes.
For most of her life. It's just completely unnecessary. There's going to be people that are going to listen to this podcast and say Doug and Fred are a couple of a-holes. You know what I mean? And I don't agree with what they're saying, and I don't like what they're saying. And the only thing that we're saying is that we're being our best selves, and we're trying to include everyone to have the opportunity to be their best self. And we're just calling out the things that are not fluid within that paradigm. That's all. We're not calling for war. You and I aren't crawling through the window at the Capitol building. But there are people that think that we're a threat.
Yeah. Let's take this down to the granular level. When I look through your reel, I was really taken back by that piece that you did of the 9-year-old boy who always wanted to be a girl.
Yes. Yes.
Would you feel comfortable just sharing a little bit about what that experience was like for you? That family, man, I wanted to just hug everybody. They just seemed so amazing.
They are
What was that
amazing, and
experience like? What was that experience like for you and for your company to go through that?
life altering, life changing.
Wow.
On the list of next big thing that I'm doing,
Mm.
that I'm gonna drag Willie and Marvin with me
Oh,
into
wow.
that project, because I think that their sensibility as music artists help to capture
Mm.
the sensibilities of what the child has gone through, and emphasis on child. This is a child. And when we're talking about a child, we are talking about a developing human being. We're not talking about sexual orientation. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
I
Like,
do know what you
people are obsessed with how we are oriented sexually
mean. Yeah.
before we're even sexual beings.
Yeah. This is a
That's it.
how old is she now?
14. She'll be 14.
Okay.
Literally in a few days. She'll
Okay.
be
Because
4. She'll be 14 this month.
are you doing some more work with that family
Yeah,
and with her? Okay.
yeah. I've been following this kid since they were 9. It's the most powerful thing I've ever done. It's the thing that I do where I figure out who really respects me. Because there are people I've been friends with for years,
Mm.
for decades, and they're out. They're like, Fred, I love you, but I can't ride with you on this,
Wow.
because they're so anchored in their perception of what they think sexuality is. And
Mhm.
the bottom line is, who you choose to spend your intimate time with is your own business. There's nobody else in the room. What are you talking about? And who or how you choose to present yourself in public is your God given right. You know what I mean? I wake up every day and I want to present to the world as a man. That's my impulse. That's what I want to do. I'm comfortable with it. And when I want to be intimate, my propensity is towards females. That's just, you know what I mean? I just lucked out that it fits into a socially acceptable model.
Yes.
But imagine if that wasn't the case. Imagine if, I really want to do, I really want to put a dress on, and what I really want to do, I want to be with other men. Then all of a sudden I'm a bad person, in spite of the fact I still have all of these other attributes.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, those two things are a deal killer. That just ruined, oh, well, I might as well just, kill myself because I'm worthless now because of my own personal private decisions. you know and that's why these people that go through the Capitol window are a joke, because on one level they're like, oh, our rights are being invaded, the election's being stolen or whatever, but then they want to turn around and use a Bible that they don't even read to tell somebody else how to live their life. It's
Now,
crazy.
when you say that they don't read it, that um,
Dude,
what's the indication of that? That gives me a little peek, I think, into your world. But what are you saying there?
I'm saying is that a lot of these people talk a good game, but they can't walk the walk. There are so many people that I know in these Bible Belt states that talk about all this stuff. They don't go to church on Sunday, man. They're not really following the tenets of what it
Hmm.
means to be Christ-like. You know, they don't know. They're not trying. They're just using it as an excuse to support and buoy their own geopolitical agenda that in many cases just revolves around their insecurities.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's not even about the money. They
Yeah,
just don't
and
want
their own woundedness. I'm a
Exactly.
therapist, and I know the whole family systems model, but also just getting into trauma and all of that, and just knowing that so much of this comes from early trauma.
Yep.
It's been
Absolutely.
repressed. It's
Yep.
disfigured a person's orientation in regard, not sexual
Yep.
orientation, but their orientation in regards to being oriented towards somebody else, somebody different.
Yep.
They're not able to hold
Nope.
the difference of another and hold themselves intact. Things
Right.
have to be, I mean, homogenous. It just has to be homogenous. It can't be that my neighbor is trans, because if my neighbor is trans, that reflects something about, not so much maybe about me, but it reflects that maybe that's acceptable and I'm unwilling to go there because it stretches me too far, because my world is small and I need to stay intact. They need to now be demonized. They need to be other. They can change, but they can't remain who they are. I can't hold that kind of tension.
Nope.
If I've got that mindset. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a poem by James Baldwin called They Might Be Dragons. And he wrote it in the early 80s, and it was referencing Michael Jackson because his meteoric rise, and he was so different, and he was starting to get a lot of criticism. And he was talking about how when you're different, you literally exorcise the demons from hell, because if you become successful, people can't control themselves anymore, and they'll do whatever they can do to take you down after you break the bank at Monte Carlo. They just can't help themselves. It's this condition that, like you said, wounded human beings have, and it's really sad. It's a profound construct. It's like J. Edgar Hoover. When you really learn about J. Edgar Hoover, this guy was a jerk for decades. And then in the end, you find out he's gay. And you're like, really? This is like the angriest gay man ever of all time that just ran around hurting people. That's how wounded he was.
That's correct.
You are spot on in your assessment. Adolf Hitler was just an angry guy that got rejected from art school. When you find out who these people really are as people, they spend their lives trying to get back to their sled called Rosebud.
Yeah.
And it's the cult of personality, and these people just rise up, and other people around them are so weak, and they get so scared to stand up to people. And I remember that so vividly growing up and in high school and in college, and, the people that were bullies. And I was just a bully magnet. Like, people that were bullies, I drove them crazy. And
how were you a bully magnet, Frederick?
I was too different. I was Black. I was well-spoken. I was affable. People liked me. I enjoyed many different things. I lived my life with an exuberance and joy that wasn't within the perceived paradigm of how I was supposed to act as a Black kid. I was always labeled as like, oh, he wants to be white. He's an Oreo cookie. He might be gay or whatever. People would look for these things that they perceive to be negative attributes, and they would create constructs. But at the end of the day, I was never going away. Bullies did what they did around me, but I just was always there. And it was something that matriculated well into my adulthood. I've almost been shot to death by gang members numbers of times. I've had people that are just completely, they lose their bleep with me because they're just so frustrated because I'm not like them, and I don't act like them, and I don't think like them, and I don't believe what they believe. It's probably one of the aspects of being myself that's very daunting, is that I'm able to conjure up violence in people simply by being something unexpected. My grandmother worried about it with me all the time in Chicago. She was always like, don't talk to anybody, don't look at anybody, because I would irritate people, because I came across as something beyond what people could conceive. I remember I was doing a music video. Warren G was there, Snoop Dogg was there, Dr. Dre was there, and they were all laughing and making fun of me because they said that I wasn't American. They thought I was European. They couldn't believe that I was from the South Side of Chicago, because they could not believe that a person from the South Side of Chicago could be intelligent, articulate, sophisticated, and then be a leader. because I was the guy directing the music video. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do
Like
see what you're saying. Yeah.
it was beyond their level of comprehension. We have embedded ourselves with so much stereotype that we believe a paradigm that's not the matrix. It's a paradigm that is buoyed and fueled by fear. Fear is the alternative universe. You know, there's the red pill, the blue pill. The red pill is fear. Do you want to live your life in fear or not? And so many people choose fear because fear feels so comfortable. Fear feels so normal. Fear is what people have been indoctrinated into at an early age, like you were saying, because they've been abused and they've suffered, you know, punitively, unfairly, and they live their lives like that. And only some of us are able to overcome that. And some of us are fortunate enough to never really experience that.
Well, let's talk about overcoming that. So what does it take?
Yep.
What does it take to see beneath the surface of these things, these stereotypes, these preconceived notions? I mean, what are the variables that must be in place? That some are to be taught, but what does it take to see beneath the surface?
I think the first step is how people live their own lives and the personal challenges they put in front of them. It's like, remember like you're growing up and you're taking a class and you suck at it, but you got to pass the class?
I remember that really well, Frederick.
Exactly. I remember, and you're like, I can't move on to the next class, or I can't graduate, or there's some barrier there. Do you know what I mean? Or my parents are going to kill me. You know, I hate studying the element tables. I'll never remember what boron is, you know, and the Pythagorean theorem is eating me alive.
Sounds like you did really well in school, Frederick. I would have been looking over your shoulder saying, hey, man, I need that answer.
Exactly. What's the answer to number 12? I'll give you my sandwich at lunch if you'll just tell me.
That's right.
Well, I did get a lot of lunches, that's for sure.
Okay.
But those are the things that initially enable you to get over yourself and to get over this abuse of others, because you find something in yourself that has value. When you learn how to do something, you learn how to overcome an obstacle, you learn how to become a better person. You don't ever want to do anything to extinguish that. You don't want to do anything to ever taint that. And so you start to have value. It's that little light that shines inside of you. And you never want to do anything to extinguish that. But if you spend your life cheating, dodging responsibility, dodging accountability, avoiding things, you have nothing to value on the inside. Therefore, you can see nothing of value in others.
Yeah, I would suggest that you're very depleted on the inside.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you're always running on E.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have to extract your fuel from others. You don't have an inherent energy source inside of you. You become hollow, you become vapid. You start to have feelings of loathing. You feel meaningless. You don't feel like you have purpose. I mean, that's the whole point with Citizen Kane. The guy had everything of material, and in the end, he dies alone by himself with no one around. And all the money in the world couldn't save him, and the one thing that he wanted was his sled that he couldn't get back. You know, that's the deal. I mean, or it's Hitler in the bunker, and he's like, I've ruined the world. I'm just going to blow my brains. I'm not even going to face judgment. You know, it's better to blow my brains out.
Yes.
You know, these things are sad and pathetic. You know, I think about the life that I saw an interview with Richard Nixon with Larry King in the early 90s before Nixon died. And this guy's just like so hollowed out on the inside, still living in denial, still trying to point the finger and saying that it's other people. It's not him. It's not him. It's not him. And I'm just like, wow, you have just really wasted your life,
Hmm.
you know? And that's the path that Trump's headed down.
Yes.
You know, his wife's not going to stay with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people around him are going to jail. He might go to jail. He might have to leave the country. He might live in exile someplace. Or some mob family might mop the floor with him in Manhattan, or some Russian mafia might mop the floor with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There are people waiting in line for him. He's a bad dude that's never done anything for anybody else. And that's the reality of his life, because he never found anything of purpose within himself, so he couldn't see the purpose of others.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah,
it really is
exactly.
sad. And I think when I hear somebody like you talking like this, it really does draw empathy out of me for him. But boy, it doesn't take me long. And that's just more work that I have to do with my own shadow and the violence that lives in me. Because I tell you what, I can just turn so quick to saying all the things that you said are probably going to happen to him. I say, yeah, and I want them to happen. I want them to happen soon. Now, I do want him to be brought to justice. And I think that, and for example, everybody that stormed the Capitol, for that to happen as well. But that violence in me and my own shadow stuff that I've continued to work on as a 61-year-old white male. But it's, empathy and compassion and love. I mean, that's where it's at, but that's really hard to practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Really it's really hard to practice.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, I always think about Dr. King, those moments before he died. He's standing there leaning over the balcony asking Jesse where we're going for dinner. And then suddenly he's lying on his back, bleeding. You know what I mean? Going, I'm dying. I just got shot. And in those moments, does he say, oh, this was worth it? Or he says, this wasn't worth it? I think about it like that. It's like, the classic example, of course, is Christ on the cross, because he had a lot of time to think about it, and the last thing he says is, forgive them, Father, for they not know what they do, or whatever. Those are just such profound things to be, when Kennedy takes the first bullet, he's like, you see him, he reaches up to his throat and he's like, I've just been shot. What's happening? I'm just doing the best I can. But people are saying, we don't want your best. Robert Kennedy, he was like in and out of consciousness for 3 days after being shot. Imagine what that was like for him.
Yeah, be bad.
Yeah, Lincoln held on for several days before he died. Gandhi or whatever. I mean, these weren't bad people. These were decent people. But people still felt like they had to go. But here's a guy that's president of the United States that I would say arguably is responsible for at least half the deaths in our country due to coronavirus.
Yes.
That is a reasonable argument. Do you think he loses sleep? Do you think he cares? No. I mean, he incited a riot at the Capitol building. 5 people are dead. Do you think he cares?
No.
Exactly. Do you think he ever wakes up at night going, oh my God, this George Floyd thing is making me crazy? No, he doesn't. And that's really sad. I mean, he calls football players sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Young black men that are exploited from the time they get to middle school, and that their educations are bypassed in order for them to play sports. And the only thing they know how to do is play sports. And then you're telling them that they also aren't allowed to even take a position on how they're treated in society. And
now we're talking about money, and we're talking about, people's gifts. What about, let's talk about art and commerce in America. I know that's something you want to talk about. In a world where you got to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be seen as a success. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, it sounds like you've done some quite lucrative projects. You've been around people that have done well, but I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
do you have to sell yourself to do that? I mean, how does that work in your industry?
There is a writer from the 19th century. Her name was Sojourner Truth. And she has a famous quote that says, I sell the shadow in order to sustain the substance. And I always found that to be extraordinarily profound. And that's where we all, that's what it means to survive in America if you're creative. And once again, Willie and Marvin can speak to this because they've got stories where they've vacillated between those two universes. And it's interesting now to talk to them because we talk about the creative stuff, but we also have to have these conversations about marketing. We all hate it,
Yeah.
but we all understand we got to have these conversations about marketing. It's no joke, man. It's about surviving, and you have to learn how to accept that to get anywhere, because unfortunately in America, if you're an artist, you can be the most talented person in the world. I like to say, if Jesus came back tomorrow, if he didn't have an Instagram page, nobody's going to care. It's not going to matter. Like, if he's not pulling units, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't have a distribution deal, it doesn't matter. You have to have the leverage that's necessary to get your message out there. If you don't, or you don't want to do it, get on a boat and go to Europe or go someplace else and live out the rest of your life. But if you want to be here, you are going to have to hustle. And that is why so many hip hop artists made it in the late 80s through the 90s into the 2000s. And that mantra, you heard it from the beginning up to and including today. They still always say the same thing. Play the game or the game plays you. You better get your hustle on. That's real. And anybody that doesn't want to think about that or buy into that is crazy. That is how it goes down. I mean, Taylor Swift used to go from door to door to door to different record labels when she was 15 years old, playing her guitar and say, hi, my name is Taylor Swift. I'd love to play a song for you. Trying to get a deal. If you don't hustle, you ain't going to make it. You can be as talented as you want to be. You might know where the Holy Grail is, but if you don't know how to market yourself, nobody cares. And that's why the marketing exceeds the talent. I mean, you look at, I went to a Kardashian party at a club in the early 2000s, walked in the door, saw Kim Kardashian and all of that stuff, and said, oh my God, they're going to be famous. I got to get out of here.
Sounds like you're good at predicting things, Frederick.
Sadly. And I knew it. Because they knew they know how to market themselves.
To work that angle, yeah.
They know how to work that angle. And it didn't even matter whether they had any talent or not. It completely had to do with their ability to work the angles. And then I've been around people that have all the talent in the world and they're so incredibly gifted and no one ever noticed them. I remember being in Atlanta and CeeLo Green was in the Goody Mob. And they were signed to LaFace Records. And nobody cared about CeeLo Green because he was short and fat and ugly. And nobody cared. But he was the most talented person in that whole group or that whole clique. And that includes Outkast, which was in that group as well. But nobody liked or was into CeeLo because CeeLo was quiet and he was shy and he was reserved and didn't really put himself out there. I was doing a job years ago and Chris Tucker walks up to me and he's like, man, you're never going to be shit in this business until you really start shouting, And I was like, that's just so not me. And now fast forward years later, Chris Tucker shouted his way to, millions of dollars. But where's Chris Tucker now? And I say that with respect. I'm not disrespecting him, but I'm just saying that that approach to, like, I'm just going to be the loudest mother bleeper in the room, it has a limited shelf life. You got to be careful with marketing as well. You have to really know what you're doing and how you're putting yourself out there. And the trick is to market yourself with something that has some level of quality to it, and at the same time is going to appeal to the masses, that they're gonna pay attention to what you have going on or what you're about. And we don't see a lot of that, where there are some really great talented artists that are saying something that's meaningful, and at the same time, they're able to aggregate a dollar. Because most people are like, oh, I'll just take my clothes off. I mean, people are supporting themselves on social media all the time, literally by taking their clothes off.
Right. Do you think
Which
this
is,
is going to change at all in regards to
yeah.
the hustle? Because I mean, it sounds like you have to do it to survive, but at some point, I mean, it's really out of whack. Do you think is that
It,
ever going to change to where you're not going to have to hustle, in such a false way? I mean, I'm not saying you do, but I mean others who just say, because some people are just much more talented at
agreed.
self-promotion.
Yeah.
They're just really
Agreed.
good at
Yeah.
it. And
I
I mean,
know.
how much
Yeah.
how much of that can you learn? And is there a point of no return? I mean, do you
Yeah.
hit
It's
30
a,
or 40, and if you're in the arts, let's say, and you haven't
yeah.
learned it by then, it's like, well, it's over for you. I mean, what's going to shift that?
Well, maybe Marvin and Willie,
And you?
um, and me, and other people that are like us, and us getting into the mix in a way where we're open to the idea of being able to bring others into the fold and supporting them and
Yeah, there.
bringing them along.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
we don't have that. Like, Oprah just sold her company. Berry Gordy sold Motown Records back in the 80s to Polygram Records. I mean, we just have this long-standing tradition of aggregators that
Mm,
when they get to the threshold of they can actually open the doors for others, they
mm,
they sell it away, and the corporations come in and absorb it, and then they suck it into the system, so no one else can get into the system.
yeah, yeah.
And we need some brave entrepreneurs that are operating at the top. We've got plenty of brave entrepreneurs at the bottom trying to get
So
in.
true.
We're bottom heavy. We're not top heavy. We need, like, I say it all the time. It's just like, I've realized that my real purpose in life is not to make content, it's to curate content. It's not to be a filmmaker, it's to be a consultant.
Hmm.
I will do more damage in this business by aggregating other artists than me trying to just do it on my own. And I have the ability to survive on my own, and I've proven that already. And I'm not saying that I won't continue to do the projects that I want to do on my own, but I have to do more projects that are not me than are me. I have to
True.
I have to I have to dominate myself in other strategic partnerships. That's why I'm all, snuggled up with Marvin and Willie, is because it's a part of the beginning of that part of the history of me as an artist. Like, I've got to build relationships with people. If I'm going to really make any real change in this business, because as great as these artists were of the past, they're not really I mean, they're not doing anything. I mean, with all due respect to, like, Bruce Springsteen or Marvin Gaye or whatever, I'm just using them as reference points
Right.
because they have huge catalogs of music. They've aggregated a significant amount of money, but they're not driving the discourse of today's artists. Bruce isn't walking into a room
Yeah.
setting the tone, saying, "Hey, I'm bringing these new people in, and this is what we're going to do." That's not happening. Oprah didn't want that job. You know, these other people, Barry Gordy's still alive. He lives in Newport Beach in a really nice house and hangs out with the uber rich. And every day he wakes up, everybody's like, oh my God, you're Barry Gordy. You're so amazing. But he's not doing shit for anybody.
Yeah.
He's not changing the business. Bob Johnson, who owned BET, he sold it to Viacom for $5 billion. He's not doing anything.
I've never really thought about it from the angle you're talking about, but I've thought about it from like an artist like a Springsteen, or take any of the icons, take a Neil Young, any of them, and maybe they're doing more than we know, but we're not seeing them bringing along somebody. Like my son's a musician, and he's struggling, man, and he's not. It's tougher. There's a lot of now avenues and pathways for music, but my gosh, the competition is just incredible. And, he's 25 years old and he doesn't like to self-promote. Now he knows he needs to work at that, but to have somebody older, bring him along, and you're just putting words to things that I've never thought about them at the level of you sell a business that's already reached this pinnacle, and now you just sell to somebody else, and it's going to become, likely it's going to become very impersonal. It's not going to keep. Whatever Oprah was doing in her name, that's lost.
It is
to get sold. Yeah, it's gone.
Exactly. And remember, 10 years ago, everybody's like, "Oh my God, Oprah's going to change the world."
Right.
And then Oprah realized that, oh my God, I can't change the world on my own. I can't change the world just by having my Sunday morning talk show.
Yeah, right.
Oprah made a mistake. Oprah didn't say like, okay, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to find these, Greta Gerwigs and, these Issa Raes and these other talented artists that are out there. She could have scooped up every single talented female artist over the past 10 years.
Wow.
Did she? No. Did she have her feelers out there? Did she have her radar out there? Did she have her antennas up, like looking for it? No, she didn't. These people with money, they couldn't recognize talent if it jumped up and bit them in the butt. Because they're not looking for it, dude. They're hanging out at parties and they're being cool. They're not trying to change the business. And no one in the business is encouraging them to change the business.
I think you've answered my question, my earlier question of how does this change? I think you're putting words to how it would change if more people were to make these kind of decisions.
Exactly. Take with all this technology now, it's like we'll use your kid as an example. Let's just say let's play a game here for a second. Let's just say, me, Willie, and Marvin are sitting on a sack of money in a year, right? And we decide we're going to allocate X amount of dollars to development of new artists. And you say, hey, remember my kid? He's a musician. He's pretty good. And then we bring him in and he's great. And you know what we say? You know something? Let's do this. Let's go with this. Let's get this kid out there. Let's make this happen. And we're going to market it. We're going to market it in the right way. We're going to get him the right campaign. We're going to get him in front of people. We're going to twist arms. We're going to crack skulls to make it happen. I'm serious. This is how the business works, man. You got to whip.
Sure it does.
You got to whip some ass. You got to hang Jimmy Fallon out a window to get him on Fallon. Like that's how this works. But we're committed to this. We're going to make this kid go. That's how this business needs to work. That's how you get it. That's how you get it done. That's how it got done in the past. Yes. That is how people got in the door.
That's right.
A favor on a favor on a favor with talent that can deliver. Your kid's got to be talented. He can't be a bust. But if he's talented, let's make this work.
Yeah. It reminds me of what you were talking about earlier, even in relationship to your family, in relationship to your grandmothers. And that is that, we really work off of what our ancestors have given us, if they've given us good things. And for example, if you were to do this for my son or somebody else's son or daughter, you're creating a culture where people are just beginning to think about paying it forward, right?
Completely. And I'm just continuing on with the
Mm,
legacy of my grandmother. And if your son is a part of the lineage and the legacy of what my grandmother started, then so
mm,
be it.
that's
Those are the things that tie us together as a culture and a society. Those are the things that make us American. Those are the things that make us family. Those are the things that bring down these effing walls based
yeah.
on race and status and religious order and all this other crap. Do you know what I
Fred-
mean?
I do
That's
know
what it's
what you mean, Frederick. Frederick? What sustains you in the midst of? I mean, there's some battles here. You fought your own battles. Simply, your skin
about.
color has set you up to fight
Yeah.
battles and other things, and all the ancestral connections that you have and the battles that have been fought. I mean, what sustains you on let's say a daily basis, and what are some of your darker times, your more
Wow.
difficult times?
The darker times are when I allow myself to be swallowed up by what other people think and what other people say. You
Hmm.
know, when they try to convince me that it's good enough. You don't have to try harder. You're okay. It's not your fight. It's not your battle. I don't know what you're complaining about. Just do what I want or what I think. You know, those are the things that make it dark when I don't stand up for myself and say, hey, I don't appreciate what you just said to me or what you did to me or how you perceive me as a person. You know, those
Hmm.
are the things that make it dark. When I start thinking like, oh, I need to be polite, I need to be the better person, they don't really understand, they're wrong, I'm going to turn the other cheek, I'm not going to say anything. Nah, that's when the trouble starts. That's when the problem starts. It's when you start caring too much about what other people think and thinking like that's going to get you in the room and allow you to assimilate.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's what makes things really really dark. And the thing that keeps me going is when I just keep pushing through with the things that I believe in, that I don't allow that part of me that is inspired, that sparks me to create. You know, Marvin does it all the time. Like Marvin must send me a new song like every 2 weeks. Hey, I wrote this song last night because I was just walking around. You know, like that's yeah, it's insane. And you don't ever want to lose that at any time. And that is something that we all carry with us our whole lives. And we want to maintain that posture, you know, until we're gone.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
we need to be committed to that. And so I try as best I can to be committed to that in spite of whatever anybody else is saying around me. It's like I got into this big conversation with my dad, you know, and my dad's just like, you know, you really need to focus on your health now and all this other stuff. And I was like, you know, Dad, I totally agree with you. But if I'm going to focus on my health, you need to focus on your health. So how about this? I'll recommend a trainer for you and you get out there and you exercise. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm too old to go exercise. And I'm like, oh, so you're old enough to sit around on medication for the rest of your life. Really? You don't think exercise is better than medication or can work in concert with it and make your life a higher quality? You gotta take chances. You gotta get out there and you gotta take risks and you gotta continually face your fears and
mm,
eliminate them from the mix. You can't let your fears swallow you up. That's what's just so important. I remember I met this woman. She sings in a bar, a piano bar. She's 85 years old. I was hanging out in the bar with her one night and she sings really well. She sings show tunes. And I said, oh my God, how long have you been singing? She was like, oh, I started singing after my third husband died when I was 65 years old.
wow.
Her life began at 65, man. I'm not 65. She finally got it together and did what she wanted to do and what she was passionate about at 65 years old.
That's
It is,
priceless now, Frederick. That's
it's,
priceless.
it,
I'm
it,
61, man. I'm telling you, that's priceless. Some people I hang out
exactly,
with are thinking it's over. They're gonna
ex,
like what you're saying.
exactly. And it's never over. And it's never been a greater time in the history of mankind to be post 50 getting it done. And
Hmm.
it's like, why are you going to sit here and allow these people in diapers to swallow you up as if they know better or they know what they're doing. I have conversations with these people all the time, and they're more worried about what sounds they can reproduce out of a computer than learning how to play a musical instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying they're making a choice, and they're making the lesser choice. They're going the path of least resistance. And a lot of these young people have perfected the art of the path of least resistance, and then have created a mythology around it as if it's actually advancing the culture. And the only thing it's advancing is their own agenda. And as long as you're only advancing your own agenda, you are regressing the culture. The culture only moves forward when we all work together. It's not about the individual. It never is. It never has been. In every culture around the world since the beginning of mankind, in every tribe or wherever you go, every culture has survived because we all work together, and every culture has fallen apart is because they stopped working together. That's it. That's how I feel about it. So that's what drives me. People that want to work together, it keeps me going, man.
Boy,
the only time I feel bummed out is when people are just quitting on me left and right. And I hate it. It drives me nuts. I turn into Vince Lombardi, pacing up and down the sidelines, yelling like a maniac,
Come on, score.
Yeah, and it's
Frederick, what's your best book for 2020?
Wow. It's so funny. It's a revisit of a book that was written a few years ago about sabermetrics. And sabermetrics is a construct it's about productivity. And everything is determined by the levels of productivity that you get out of it. If you're doing something and you have a high level of productivity, it's worth your time. If you're doing something and you're not getting a high level of productivity out of it, it's not worth your time. Because it's like, we have to figure out a way to navigate out of this situation that we're currently in and make sense of it. And what the hell is going on?
Is that why you pulled it off the shelf to read it again?
Exactly. That's exactly why I did. And then the other book I pulled off the shelf during the pandemic is Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery.
Wow.
Because it is about a guy whose life was at the bottom. You can't get more bottom than Booker T. Washington was a biracial man whose mother had been raped by a white man. The white man lived down the street. He never knew him. The white man never acknowledged him, even though he knew that guy was his dad and had raped his mom. And this guy went on to become an academic and build and create universities. And is a part of the foundation of what it means to pull yourself up by your bootstraps in this society. And not enough people know about him because we're too scared to teach Black history in schools because we don't want people to know Black people are actually people.
Yeah.
Because we want to keep that. We want to keep that a secret. We want everybody to think Black people are really good at running fast and dunking basketballs, singing, dancing, and having sex with. That's the narrative that we want to keep with Black people. But like, we're so much more. And so I see it as an opportunity now for us to show the world we are so much more than what they think of us. Because right now we look really fucking bad. We look like a clown show. And so for me, it's about levels of productivity, and it's not up from slavery, it's up from Trump. How do we rise out of that?
That's a good title for a book, Frederick. We ought to write that.
We ought to write that. I actually like that. That's actually pretty good.
You got to write that one down, man. I think you got that.
I'm gonna blame you for that too. I'm gonna totally say it's your fault.
I don't mind being blamed for success. Just if it doesn't do well, don't mention the fact that
don't mention your fact that it's you. Exactly.
Frederick, this has been really just a gem of a time with you, man. Thank you for devoting the time. I mean, you've been busy this weekend. Do you mind, as we kind of come to an end here, you're there in Nashville, and I think if I read your text right, you're actually doing some filming of the site where this terrorist attack occurred, correct?
I am. I've been working on a film since April of 2020 about COVID, obviously, the political process, politics, race, culture, the unnecessary killing of our citizens at times, the unfortunate passing of John Lewis,
Yes.
and and a real handle on what's going on around us. And the film has just really started to write itself. It's things just keep happening where I have to go back out and film again. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
if you had told me in August that there would be a bombing in Nashville, I would have said that's crazy. If you had told me that they're going to storm the Capitol building, I'd have said that was crazy. But over and over again, I'm being forced to go back out and to get the thoughts and feelings of people around these particular issues. And it's astonishing when you start talking to people from all different backgrounds and cultures. I interviewed a gentleman who's a part of the LGBTQ community, and he wept on camera because he was saying that the Trump issue has created another systemic wall between him and his father. He's like, it was already bad enough that he was gay and he's trying to deal with his dad. Now he's gay and he doesn't support Trump and he's trying to deal with his dad.
Wow.
And it made him cry because deep down inside he loves his father.
Sure.
But he's gay and his father can't accept that. And he does not like Trump and his father can't accept that.
Hmm.
That's a big part of what this film is about. And the reason I'm going down to shoot at the bomb site is to get people to understand all of these things are connected. Whether we're talking about the death of John Lewis, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about a man who has a fractured relationship from his father, or we're talking about, ground zero of a horrible a domestic terrorist attack. This is who we are. And people need to see it for what it really is, rather than trying to compartmentalize it through media
Yes.
in that sort of traditional sense, or the social media sense or whatever. Because what I'm really trying to do is eliminate all of that, and I let people talk. I give them the floor, I let them talk, and they tell me what they think, and then I just show the images. I went to a Trump rally, and at this Trump rally, I had kids, children, hurling insults at progressives. They're teaching these young children on the Trumpian side to hate, to hate. It was upsetting. It was disturbing.
Not bad. And you were there filming?
And I was there filming. And the things that I'm shooting are not what the media's cameras are pointed in a completely different direction than I am.
Hmm.
And it's bizarre, and I'm covering things in a way where sometimes I show up and no media is there. And then sometimes I show up and the media is doing their sensationalized thing that they do. And they're missing the micro moments, these
Yes,
small moments.
that's
You know,
right.
I'm I'm talking to people sometimes who their first language isn't even English. And I'm like, just say it. I'll translate it later. Just say what you need to say, you know and I'm deliberately going in and saying I'm going to talk to all different types and kinds of people, different backgrounds, ages, social groups, things like that. I'm getting an eclectic global mix of people, and it's become a very powerful piece. And the explosion in Nashville has become a part of the story, you know, because we've become so disenfranchised. And there can be many more, um, you know, terrorist attacks,
Yes.
unfortunately, in our future. You know, it's a frightening um, situation.
When will that movie be finished?
That movie will be finished in the spring. I've got a 15-minute version that is possibly going to be at the Tribeca Film Festival. It's already been accepted into a few other film festivals. It just won an award at a film festival as well. And then I've got a longer 90-minute version of it that's coming down the pike. And then ultimately, I want to expand it, and I want it to be a digital series on Netflix or Amazon.
Oh,
I want to go next level with this stuff. I want people to be able to watch this as a program that they see regularly, you know, within the universe of them consuming media, where they're getting a chance to hear people from all over the country and the world talk about living and life and what it takes to survive. That's what I want to be able to do. And the project's called Pre-Existing Freedom.
we will look for it. It would be so cool to see that on Netflix.
I would love it to be on Netflix,
Sense.
you know, and I want it to be a platform that supports the idea that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for everyone, not
I
just a
can,
select group.
I can tell that's what drives you. This has been a really good time with you, Frederick. Thank you for spending the time. I know it was a busy weekend for you. Thank you for working it into your schedule. Can we do this again?
I would love to. It's amazing. You do a great job here. I really enjoy this. You're a tremendous journalist.
Oh, well, thank you, Frederick. Thank you, man. Thank you.
This is tomorrowpictures.tv.